Have you ever seen a professional sports league actively try to destroy its own golden goose? Well, grab some popcorn because what's happening with Caitlin Clark and the WNBA might be about to get federal investigators involved. And before we dive into this bombshell story, make sure to hit that subscribe button because we're about to expose something that could change women's basketball forever. Picture this: you're the biggest star your league has ever seen. You've single-handedly increased viewership by 366%, merchandise sales by 601%, and brought millions of new fans to a struggling league. Your reward? Getting physically assaulted on the court while referees look the other way. Sound crazy? Well, that's exactly what's happening to Caitlin Clark, and now former White House officials are calling for a federal civil rights investigation. The Wall Street Journal just dropped an article that has WNBA executives sweating bullets. Sean McClain, a former Trump administration advisor, is claiming that what's happening to Caitlin Clark isn't just bad officiating. It's a potential civil rights violation. And honestly, when you look at the evidence, it's hard to argue otherwise. Let's talk numbers for a second because they tell a story that'll make your jaw drop. Caitlin Clark absorbed 17% of all flagrant fouls last season. That's double what any other player faced. Think about that. One player out of an entire league is getting hammered twice as hard as everyone else. If that happened in any other workplace in America, lawyers would be lining up at the door. But here's where it gets really interesting. Remember when Aja Wilson said, quote, "It doesn't matter what we all do as black women, we're still gonna be swept underneath the rug," end quote. She literally said the quiet part out loud. She admitted that race is, quote, "a huge thing, and it boils my blood when people say it's not about race, because it is," end quote. Well, congratulations, Aja. You might have just given federal investigators exactly what they need to prove systematic discrimination. The evidence is honestly overwhelming. Rebecca Lobo, one of the most respected analysts in women's basketball, watched replays of Clark getting fouled multiple times in single possession and said, quote, "Every single one of them is a foul," end quote. Yet the refs just stand there like they're watching a different game. It's gotten so bad that Clark herself has said, quote, "Everybody is physical with me. They get away with things others don't," end quote. And let's not forget the Olympic snub. Clark led the entire league in assists, but somehow didn't make the Olympic roster. The selection committee included league executives and former WNBA players. Coincidence? At this point, if you believe that, I've got some oceanfront property in Arizona to sell you. What makes this even more outrageous is comparing it to how other leagues protect their stars. The NBA practically bubble-wrapped Michael Jordan. The NFL literally rewrote the rulebook to protect Tom Brady. They called it the Brady Rule, for crying out loud. But the WNBA? They're treating their biggest star like a tackling dummy at football practice. Here's the kicker though. This isn't just about basketball. Under civil rights law, specifically Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, what's happening to Clark could constitute a hostile work environment. The Supreme Court case Harris versus Forklift Systems from 1993 set the precedent. When severe or pervasive conduct alters someone's working conditions based on race, that's a violation, folks. And before anyone says, "Oh, this is just sports, people get fouled all the time," let me remind you of something. DJ Carrington nearly took Clark's eye out last year. We're not talking about hard basketball plays here. We're talking about plays that could end careers. Clark has already missed 10 games this season due to injuries from these targeted attacks. When she's out, ratings drop 55%. That's not a typo. More than half the audience disappears when Clark isn't playing. The league's response? Crickets. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert acts like nothing's happening. Adam Silver, who oversees the WNBA as NBA commissioner, is nowhere to be found. Not a single player has been suspended for flagrantly fouling Clark. Not one. Meanwhile, the Washington Mystics owner Sheila Johnson actually questioned why Clark was Time's Athlete of the Year. The jealousy is so obvious it's painful to watch. But here's where this story takes a wild turn. With Donald Trump back in office, there's serious talk about federal intervention. The Trump administration has already shown they're willing to investigate civil rights violations in sports. They've proposed federal standards for NCAA athletics and launched task forces for other discrimination issues. And let's be real, investigating a league dominated by people who openly admit they're targeting someone based on race? That's exactly the kind of case that gets attention. Congress is already sniffing around. Senator Jim Banks sent a letter to Commissioner Engelbert demanding answers about Clark's treatment. If the WNBA leadership has to sit in front of Congress and explain why one player gets double the flagrant fouls of everyone else, how do you think that's gonna go? Spoiler alert, not well. The legal precedent is actually pretty clear-cut. In Texas Department of Community Affairs versus Bourdain from 1981, the court said employees can claim less favorable treatment due to race without having to prove direct discrimination. The pattern itself is enough to warrant investigation, and boy do we have a pattern here. Think about what other workplace in America would tolerate this. Imagine if you showed up to your office job and your coworkers physically assaulted you 17% more than anyone else while management looked the other way. You'd have lawyers fighting over who gets to represent you. But because it's sports, we're supposed to just accept it. The really crazy part is that Clark has transformed the WNBA more than any player in history. We're talking about someone who got 1.29 million All-Star votes, shattering every record, yet she ranked 9th among guards on the player ballot. Dick Vitale called it pure jealousy, and he's absolutely right. What's even more frustrating is watching games without Clark versus with her. The physicality completely changes. When she's on the court, it's like watching mixed martial arts. When she's injured and sitting out, suddenly everyone remembers how to play basketball without throwing elbows. It's so obvious that even casual fans are noticing the difference. And can we talk about the Marina Mabrey incident for a second? She literally slammed into Clark's back for no basketball reason whatsoever. That's not physical play, that's assault. In any other context, that's a criminal charge. But in the WNBA, it's just Tuesday when you're playing against Caitlin Clark. The Wall Street Journal article points out something really important. The Labor Department could review league protocols for workplace safety. The Justice Department's Civil Rights Division could get involved. And if the league doesn't clean up its act, Congress might reconsider the WNBA's special privileges, including antitrust exemptions and broadcast deals. That's the nuclear option, and it would devastate the league. You know what the craziest part of all this is? Clark herself probably doesn't even want federal intervention. She just wants to play basketball. But when a league refuses to protect its biggest star from systematic targeting, sometimes outside forces have to step in. It's like when Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier in baseball. He didn't ask for federal protection either, but sometimes doing the right thing requires intervention. The timing couldn't be worse for the WNBA. They're trying to negotiate new media deals, expand the league, and grow their fan base. Having federal investigators crawling through your offices asking why you allowed your biggest star to be physically targeted based on her race? That's not exactly a selling point to sponsors. And let's address the elephant in the room. Yes, Caitlin Clark is white in a predominantly black league, but discrimination is discrimination regardless of which direction it flows. If the races were reversed and a black player was being systematically targeted in a predominantly white league, we'd rightfully call it what it is: racism. The same standard has to apply here. What makes this even more absurd is that Clark has done nothing but elevate everyone around her. Her presence has increased salaries, brought in sponsors, and given players a platform they never had before. She's literally making everyone richer, and their response is to try to injure her. Make it make sense. The comparison to how other leagues handled their transformative stars is just embarrassing for the WNBA. When Tiger Woods transformed golf, the PGA Tour protected him like Fort Knox. When Serena Williams dominated tennis, she was treated like royalty. When Wayne Gretzky played hockey, he had enforcers whose entire job was to protect him. But Caitlin Clark, she's out there getting mugged while refs check their phones. Here's what really gets me. The WNBA has been struggling for decades to gain mainstream relevance. They finally get a player who brings in millions of new fans, sells out arenas, and makes the league must-watch TV. And their response is to let other players physically abuse her to the point where she's missed almost half the season with injuries. It's like winning the lottery and then setting the ticket on fire. The federal investigation threat isn't just hot air either. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission already investigated Dearica Hamby's pregnancy discrimination claims against the WNBA. There's precedent for federal oversight of the league. Adding a racial discrimination and hostile work environment case to the mix, that could trigger major changes. And before anyone says this is just about tough play or paying your dues as a rookie, let me remind you of something. Nobody's saying Clark should get special treatment on foul calls. We're saying she should get equal treatment. When you're getting fouled at literally double the rate of your peers, that's not paying dues. That's being targeted. The really ironic part is that all this controversy is actually proving Clark's value. When she plays, ratings skyrocket. When she's injured, they crater. The league is literally showing in real time that they need her more than she needs them, yet they continue to allow this treatment. treatment. It's business malpractice on top of everything else. What happens next could reshape the WNBA forever. If federal investigators get involved, we could see massive changes in how games are officiated, how players are protected, and how the league operates. We might see congressional hearings where league officials have to explain under oath why they allowed this to happen. Imagine Kathy Engelbert trying to explain why not a single player has been suspended for targeting Clark. The antitrust implications are huge too. Professional sports leagues operate under special exemptions from normal business laws. If Congress decides the WNBA is allowing discrimination, those exemptions could disappear overnight. That would fundamentally change how the league operates and could cost them millions in legal battles. But here's the thing, this didn't have to happen. All the WNBA had to do was protect their star player like every other professional league in the world does. Call the fouls fairly, suspend players who cross the line, make it clear that targeting anyone based on race or any other factor won't be tolerated. Basic stuff that any competent leadership should handle. Instead, they've created a situation where their biggest star is playing hurt, missing games, and federal investigators might come knocking. They've turned what should have been the golden age of women's basketball into a controversy that makes the league look petty, jealous, and discriminatory. Way to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. As this story develops, keep your eyes on a few key things. Watch for any statements from the Department of Justice or Labor Department. See if more members of Congress join Senator Banks in demanding answers. And most importantly, watch what happens when Clark comes back from injury. If the targeting continues, that federal investigation might move from possibility to reality real quick. The bottom line is this: Caitlin Clark deserves to play basketball without being assaulted. The fans deserve to see the best player in the league actually play instead of sitting injured. And the WNBA deserves leadership that protects its assets instead of allowing them to be destroyed by jealousy and racism. If it takes federal intervention to make that happen, then so be it. This story is far from over. In fact, it might just be beginning. Make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell, because when this federal investigation drops, you'll want to be the first to know. The WNBA wanted attention? Well, careful what you wish for. They might be about to get more attention than they ever bargained for, and it's coming with subpoenas and civil rights violations. Like this video if you think Clark deserves better, comment below with your thoughts on whether the feds should get involved, and subscribe for more breaking coverage of this developing story. The truth always comes out eventually, and in this case, it might come with a federal badge. Thanks for watching, and remember, when they can't beat you fairly, that's when you know you've already won.